Everybody. Welcome to the second meeting of the HRC. I'm just going to start, I think, by just allowing Amanda to introduce herself. It's our first meeting. Did somebody join? Byron's here.
Hi, this is Amanda Soloway, and I'm glad to join.
And thank you so much, Amanda. So Byron, can you hear us? Maybe, maybe not. It says he's there, but I don't see him.
Yeah, hang on. I'm coming on.
Terrific. All right. There you are.
There we go.
Oh,
Whoop. Again, there I am.
there you are. Hope you're feeling better.
I am a bit better, but I'm so sorry. It's just been a difficult time, but I'm going to be better next week.
All right. We sure wish you a speedy recovery. And Amanda just introduced
you.
herself. We had some communication snafus, and we're super happy to have Amanda Soloway now joining us. And we also have a guest. John is with us this evening. You can't see him because our dais for some reason only shows. We tried to zoom out. This was as zoomed out as we could get for some reason. There we are. Okay, we'll get cozy. We have a number of items on our agenda this evening. The first is just to review and approve or make any changes to the April minutes. So I know, Kelly, thank you for sending those out. Did anybody or everybody have a chance to look at them, and were there any changes that need to be made? Hearing no changes, would someone like to make a motion to approve the April minutes?
I move to approve the April minutes.
So thank you, Kathy and Paul. All right, so
Vote.
our April.
Do we have to vote?
Oh, sorry, do we have to vote on that? I suppose we do. Would everyone in favor of approving say aye?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? I even saw Byron mouth the word aye, so I think that's unanimous. Our minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay. All right, so our next order of business is to review and to develop a form to be housed on the website to allow people to notify us of any issues of discrimination that they perceive to have. So thank you, Stan, for doing some research for us. And thank you for sharing with us your recommendation, and probably lots of comments, but maybe Stan, do you want to just kind of kick us off with your thoughts on, do you need a copy? No, you've got it.
I don't need a copy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe strongly that we should have a website that is informational and helpful to the residents, not just employees, but employers as well. And spent some time looking at various other municipal and local HRC websites just to get a sense of what I like. I did forward a number of links to the to the members of the commission to look at. I think some of it's a matter of personal taste, and as I'd mentioned, there are probably more similarities than differences on the websites. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty in terms of whether someone has a complaint, the various sites choose one of two paths or sometimes both paths, and they are to either have complaint forms or inquiry forms. And an inquiry form, the nature of the inquiry form is what I would call pre-complaint, and the focus is to get information needed to determine whether a complaint will be appropriate, to get basic details such that we would, as a commission, get back to the complainant or the inquirer, I should say, to say, yeah, go ahead and either file a complaint with us or some other agency, or no, this is not the kind of thing that we would investigate and send them on their way. So I drafted an inquiry form as opposed to a complaint form, although I would not be opposed to also drafting a complaint form, but I think it's something we should talk about in terms of what we want to put on the website. But at a bare minimum, I think we should have an inquiry form so that someone with genuine questions about whether or not our commission is the appropriate venue for them to assert a complaint or, or have a dialogue with their employer, can ask those questions. So I looked at several inquiry forms. I modified one or more, I think a couple, to get the one that I prepared. And I'm certainly, they say I have no pride in authorship. So to the extent anyone thinks it can be edited or improved upon, I'm all ears, or I send it as a Word document and have at it.
Thank you so much. And really apparent, Stanley, you did a lot of work on this. So really, really appreciate it. It's important to have a place to start, if nothing else. So thank you. So maybe before we might get into, any nitty gritty editing, any like general feedback about it? Everybody loved it. John.
Yeah, couple things. First, I think the concept of inquiry form is probably the right way to go. Oh, normally I'm good about my mic skills, unlike others who don't always have the mic on. So, first thing, I think the term inquiry form is a good one, because having something pre-complaint allows you to perhaps de-escalate concerns and help assess whether the person has a potentially a real complaint, or if something could be mediated that isn't necessarily a legal complaint that we want to address. The second thing I think is helpful, the township has a platform called OpenGov, and we use that for filing your building permits, among other forms. So ideally, what we'd like to do, if possible, it would be good that people could enter their complaint form online, and then it would be workflowed by that platform. That way we'd have an electronic record of it. It would be easier for people to enter this as opposed to them writing something and mailing it or faxing it or coming into the office. And we want to get people to try and do as much electronically as possible, because that'll encourage people to be forthright about it. Also makes it easier for the commission to market it in terms of telling people about it. Because so if you have a concern, you want to make an inquiry, click here and you can make an inquiry, that kind of stuff. Anything that reduces the steps between that sort of stuff. And my hope is that this will encourage people to make inquiries, and maybe that might net fewer net complaints potentially, if it's handled correctly and address things so that we can help improve situations faster.
So I have two comments to that. First of all, I think a number of the websites that I looked at and a number of the inquiry forms that I looked at were set up where you could fill it out online, hit submit, and I think that's great. Although, as a practitioner, I'd say there are a small percentage of people that are uncomfortable with that and want to actually want to print out a form. I think the tide has turned to the point where more people want to fill things online, particularly when it's easier to populate and there's so many efficiencies that we can accomplish. I just didn't have the ability to do that when I was drafting my form, but I think that's a great idea. And you could also put a phone number on the inquiry form or on the web link to say, if you need a printed form, let us know, we'll send you one.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the de-escalation concept, I would suggest that at every stage of our work, we be open to the parties to de-escalate. So even in the event that you have a complaint form that is an official complaint, there ought to be a section on that asks whether the complainant would be open to mediation or to a meeting. So we should never view a complaint as such a hostile act that it would prevent discussion and dialogue and de-escalation. But the inquiry form is certainly intended. I think the purpose of an inquiry form is to weed out the complaints that shouldn't be filed, and de-escalation is one way that's done.
did you want to say something? No? Okay.
Byron? You had some thoughts maybe?
I had shared some feedback in general about the process, but I think Stan's point, because I think it's hard to know the numbers, it's such a political issue of folks who don't have access to computers or can't do them. But I think Stan's point about if the phone number was there, that would solve, or at least mostly solve that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I really favor the use of the word inquiry. It just sets the right tone, and language is everything. So I like that.
Right. So a complaint form is a different form. I mean, it doesn't look like this. And as an attorney, the significant thing about a complaint form is it actually starts the process. It complies with it begins to comply with the administrative exhaustion remedy, whereas an inquiry form does not, and it's pretty clear on it that it does not. So, yeah.
Hi, so I have a couple questions. First off, I think we should definitely have the printed form already on there as well, because there are a lot of people who are very anxious about phone calls. And so, or reaching out via email. I know that I am very quick at writing things down as opposed to typing them. So I think a lot of people would possibly want to use the paper as well, even if you submit it online. I also wanted to know, I apologize, I haven't had time to read through this. Is there any way to submit anonymously? And is that something that we are able to do here?
Not on, well, my light is on. So not on the way I drafted the form. There are, I mean, again, as a practitioner, there are very limited ways in which someone can file anonymously. It's crystal clear that it can't be anonymous from the employer. So the person being accused or the employer being accused has to know who's accusing them so that they can investigate. I've put no thought into that, and I didn't notice that on other websites, but I think it's worth. I guess there's no reason why.
Just wanted to ask.
Well,
just in
I-
case.
Yeah, and I will look into that so that I have a better answer for whether anyone else is doing that. I think Byron's comment earlier is the best answer to the need or the feeling that someone would want to be anonymous, and that is the assurance that their inquiry or complaint is confidential until they're ready to make it not confidential. And I think this form and the website, this form can be improved in that regard, and the website should be clear as well that that the process is a confidential one, and we need to have procedures to ensure that.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, because you were saying about the differences, I mean, I concur with pretty much everything that's been said, but, you're saying inquiry form, but this is asking for a fair amount of detail, which is fine, but I don't want people to think that they're filing a complaint by filling out the inquiry.
Right.
Also, oops, maybe that's at the bottom.
Yeah, this.
Okay, sorry,
clearly
I
states
missed that line.
Yeah.
I missed that line. So, but I also think like
The-
maybe we could take out like date of birth or something, like.
Well,
I think
date of
that's-
birth is important if you're making an age claim. That's the only or it's important for two reasons.
Well, but we're not making a claim yet. We're making an inquiry.
If you're making an inquiry about age discrimination and your date of birth shows that you're 24, then we would respond to say that age is only protected if you're over 40.
Can some of
that-
these be optional?
Yeah,
Okay, I
that-
wasn't sure if
that would
you
deal with
had to
that.
fill everything before submitting it.
sure. The other reason age can be important is if someone's a minor. So but none of these are not optional.
If
Yeah, I mean,
these-
I get why age would be important. I just don't know that we want to, it's a lot of information for an inquiry. So I think,
Okay. Byron, did you want to say?
Yeah,
something?
I wanted to highlight the Dublin one made two key things, and given the conversation, maybe they would be highlighted at the very top, which is confidentiality and no retaliation. Those were highlighted in theirs.
And they're both complicated concepts in discrimination law as
Yeah.
well. But so confidentiality is an obligation that the commission and its investigators and anyone working with it undertakes. Retaliation is a legal obligation that is imposed on the employer. So they're both very important though in the process. So someone ought to be, that makes a complaint ought to at least be told that that the law protects them from retaliation for making that complaint. And an employer ought to be reminded that it's included from retaliating against the employee who made a complaint, even if they don't believe the complaint. Those are things that need to be handled in our forms and in our procedures.
So I have a provocative question, perhaps based on Amanda's question about anonymity. So if somebody doesn't tell us their name and how to contact them, what would be so then we would have this information and what would we do with it? We'd have no ability to follow up on it except to go to the person that they claim or company and say, someone said this about you, or this says this happened, and they'd say yes or no, and we'd say, thank you very much. I mean, I guess we're not the police where we're looking for, 27 people have made the same complaint, so I don't know.
But first of all, we need to be able to respond to the person, right? In some way. That people can use an email address and without identifying their name. And that's relatively confidential, pretty much anonymous. We could get an inquiry that says, hey, do you guys investigate discrimination on the basis of political affiliation? And our answer would be no. But so that could be anonymous. When you get to the complaint stage, now anonymity is a problem or needs to be addressed.
Okay, so any type of question to the committee would be on this form, and it could having nothing to do with actually a particular complaint. To your point, they're just could be using it to ask a question, in which case, if it's a digital form, we can just say the only thing that's required is a way to reach you back.
Yeah. I don't
And
think
then
there's
if there's nothing on there that we could follow up on, we'd at least have a way to say, we're gonna need a little more information to address it, I suppose.
yeah. I think most people are going to identify themselves, but
Sure, but I think it's a great question. That's
Yeah.
great. Really want to make sure we really flesh it out.
yeah, I've seen one anonymous complaint in litigation that was filed anonymously, and as soon as the employer got involved, the Human Relations Commission made them identify themselves for the purpose of the investigation. But again, that investigation is confidential. So at that point, they identify themselves without any issue. So anonymity is an emerging area in the law, and it's something we should talk about. I'll have to do more research to have any good opinion on it.
I also have a question of, are we allowing other people to file for someone else? If somebody doesn't feel, is that not something that's usually done?
Well,
If you see something and you feel that that was not just, and
so my opinion is no, unless you're a legal guardian. I mean, again, someone fills this form out, they're 13 years old, they're going to need a parent or legal guardian to allow them to bring a complaint. But there either something in the law that's we call, standing, and third parties don't have a right, and they're really not the best person to, try and litigate someone else's claims or rights. Claims, particularly discrimination claims, are highly personal. Not everyone wants to bring them, and they get to make that choice.
Well, so we might have to think about this is just logistical, but just having the capability of a legal guardian be able to fill it out, where it's asking if you are not the person.
Sure.
If you are not the victim, what's your relation to the victim? Are you the guardian?
Yeah, I actually, gosh, how do I say this correctly? Part of one of the reasons that this kicked off for me was there was a teenage person who felt that they were discriminated in their job in Lower Makefield because of their sexual orientation. I won't say anything more than that. And they were 16. So under this rule, could they file on their own and make their complaint?
We don't have any rules.
So then they could
Or
file.
procedures. No, I know, I don't think they could. I don't think,
They could make an inquiry though.
an inquiry, sure. An
Okay.
inquiry is just asking the question.
Well, at that point, and the reason why I say this is
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about advocacy, right? So this circumstances, this is a person that, you know, is not of full legal age, but yet is in the work environment. And in that particular instance, they could make an inquiry. We could advise them to, based on our initial discussion, if we thought their complaint was valid, to urge them to work with their legal guardian to then take the next step.
Right, shepherd them through.
Yeah.
Or to de-escalate.
Or to de-escalate,
But-
yeah,
but-
if that was the case.
Yeah, unless they're emancipated, which
Okay,
you-
yeah.
16-year-olds are, yeah, they should have a parent or legal guardian they need one to bring a legal action or also to waive legal rights. So, yeah, well, I mean, and we can have protocols for all these things, or we can make them up as issues arise.
Yeah.
No, I think it's okay. We're not going to anticipate every single thing that's going to come,
Right.
which is why you want the form to be generic enough to allow it to solicit as much as people are comfortable sharing. But
Yeah, I think so.
I think the question of whether we need there to be somehow spelled out, if you are not the person who was discriminated against, what's your relationship with that person? And do you have their permission?
Yeah, I mean, we can add that in the certification language at the end and have a separate line for, parent or,
Yeah.
parent or guardian if inquirer is, under 18.
Or it could be an older person who doesn't have.
Right,
decisional capacity.
right.
Okay, so, I mean, this is great, good conversation. Other things, particulars about the form we want to talk about? I mean, I think in general, you're hearing a lot of positive, feedback that people think you have gotten us very far in the right direction, so thank you.
Well, yeah, no problem. I believe, I mean, I don't think there's a hurry to get a form up on our website. I would think we're not going to get a lot of inquiries or complaints based on my research of other HRCs. I think the biggest benefit of a good website, user-friendly website, is as a resource and as a tool, for education. So I would sort of encourage our committee to talk about, what we need to do to get
Sure.
a good website up. And that's why I sent all those links, because I think they all do the trick, some a little better than others, but we can do that. And I do think most people are going to answer their questions, answer their own questions online. So let's put that info out there.
This just popped into my head just of my knowledge of OpenGov, but you can submit complaints or anything anonymously on OpenGov. So if we decide to go that route that John had mentioned, I just know that that's a point that just popped into my brain. There is a feature that they can be sent in anonymously if that's something that warrants further discussion about the use of OpenGov.
So on OpenGov, are you saying the form that's on, is it a form that they fill out, a digital form on OpenGov?
For permits and things of that nature, you can also do right to know requests or general, like, I'm talking about a code violation in the township and I want it to be anonymous, that type of thing.
But so
There's-
if we wanted this, would we put yet another form on that OpenGov? Or we're talking about like actually having this form that somebody would print out and mail to us, or they would be able to fill it out right on the HRC part of the site? I mean, I don't know if it has that capability.
And
Do you know?
I think it might have, and I haven't played with the details of it.
Yeah.
But context sensitive forms, meaning if I answer this way to this question, it would give me this question to follow up. So you could have a clarifying questions potentially at the front that says, I'm making this claim on or inquiry on behalf of myself, and I'm okay to be identified, right? If I hit yes to that, then I would get essentially all of the questions, the 9 questions that were there. If I don't get that, I might get a free form text that says, a box that says, it's okay to make a general anonymous inquiry. Our ability to investigate's limited, but please put in the particulars and the HRC will review it. That, I think that could be potentially an option so that it's a smoother user experience. And we have that, like, you know, like depending on like a building permit, if you have, you know, if the type of request that you're making, you get different questions. Same thing with zoning hearing board requests too.
Do we know who we would work with? Who would physically be the web person creating
It
a
would be me.
website?
Oh, for the website or for an OpenGov form
No,
specifically?
well, I'm not sure I understand OpenGov enough to know the difference
Yeah.
in that inquiry, but
Yeah.
so I'm thinking about, I looked at all these websites, okay? And I mentioned, I think Upper Dublin's website looks great. If our website looks similar to that, I'd be thrilled. How would I make that happen? Someone has to do
Can I-
that, right?
Yeah.
So I can answer a piece of that, having done some of that for the Historic Commission. We worked with the person who's contracted with LMT. He set up a page for us, and then he also set it up so that we could edit that one
Okay.
page.
But so my question is, do we need to talk to that person before we start getting down into?
Well, I am also looking at, I mean, I think for me, the bigger concern is the OpenGov, because I just went to the LMT website and then was clicking all the ways you can get into OpenGov. And I'm not seeing a way you can do it without having to set up an additional account, which is a huge barrier.
Sure.
The other thing about anonymity is so we're crystal clear. We are empowered to issue legal rulings against businesses and individuals who are employers. They have rights. They need to be served with, if we're going that far, they need to be served with paperwork that identifies who's accusing them so that they can investigate and properly defend themselves. So there's a big difference between saying, hey, I'm a taxpayer and someone down the street's not putting out their garbage on the right night. I don't want to be identified. That's very different than saying, I want to be anonymous, but I want to sue my employer for discrimination.
But I think we're conflating inquiry and complaint. Like
So
complaint, you can't be anonymous. I think inquiry, you should be able to be
an
anonymous.
inquiry can be anonymous. I agree with that. But there's a point when anonymity doesn't work, and that's
So,
when-
so we can use both of these avenues. You can keep
I-
you could keep the inquiry completely anonymous and then use the OpenGov for.
like, again, I don't know OpenGov at all. So, but
Yeah.
why shouldn't we use everything to?
Yeah, so
you know,
we're like,
to-
for example, we're encouraging all the residents now when they come in, if they have to file the building permit and everything, it's all on OpenGov. And it makes the correspondence that much easier because it's all online, but they do make personal accounts, so.
So let's set up that as a takeaway, that we need to investigate what are the options to host it on open.gov versus on our site. What are the capabilities? And we'll bring that back to explore. Kelly and I will do some legwork
Yeah.
on that, I guess. Okay. Anything else on the form? It's a great form.
Yeah, thank you, Stan, for all that. That's great work.
Thank you.
Great form.
I'll be happy when it's a form that is on our great website.
That's right. I know, well, we're getting there. So business item 3, I guess we don't have anything to vote on because we didn't like.
Because we don't have any forms or website.
Right. We don't have it yet, but, so 3 is to review and develop the other sections for this great website, which I did a little bit of, very little bit of work compared to what Stan had to do. And, so we all know we already had the mission, so we had that from last time. We did, sort of the harder work last time. And so this time I just did 3 smaller sections on basically about us, what are protected classes and how to file a complaint. So, comments in general about any of the sections, then we can get into what's in them, unless there's, people say, do we even want to have all these sections? Because we don't have to have them.
I think, I mean, I think these sections are good and I have some other ideas. I think to address Stan's concerns about not having something up right away, I think what we could maybe do is just with the how to find a complaint, just have a working on the form in the interim. If you have any questions, you can call, like, you know, we can set something up so that we
Okay.
can get at least an inquiry to
Right.
us.
And I think you raised the point, there's a how to file a complaint, how to file an inquiry would be probably the first
Well,
correction.
in fairness to me, I drafted an inquiry form because you submitted this, which referred to an inquiry form.
Okay, I just need to change.
That's why I did it
the
that way.
name of The header.
No, well,
It says how to file a complaint.
no, I think, I actually like this a lot. I wouldn't change it because the way we're saying to a reader, I believe at this point, is the way you file a complaint is you start by filling out our inquiry form. And we're going to then contact you and help you file a complaint if it's appropriate. And that's why I did inquiry form and not a complaint, because
Okay.
I thought that's where you were headed. And I like all of this work. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's all good and should be on a website. Either, you know, I would be happy to put this on a website now and while we work
Yes,
on
we
a,
can. I mean,
yeah.
if everybody likes it, we have everyone here but Melody, so we have and Melody's actually.
Not a voting member.
So and Byron, we just lost him. Oh, now he's back.
still muted though.
I just have a general question. John, is there anything that the board needs to approve specifically before we would put any of this onto the website?
So, before the meeting, I know, the chair of the board Dan Grenier reached out to you, Tara, to
Yeah.
ask about appearing at our second meeting in June. to
Yeah.
Talk about stuff. At that time, you certainly could talk about the process and stuff. I don't think there would need to be a formal approval for the placement of pages or website or anything like that. That's relatively de minimis and expected in the course of what we're doing here. So I wouldn't anticipate.
Okay, because as voted on at the last meeting, the mission statement we had come to and we put it up. It's all off of the ordinance, which is also on the page. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's up already.
There shouldn't be any problems with that.
Okay.
Now, the only thing I'm curious about, and I keep it in the back of my head, is right to know requests about stuff, which is once someone makes an inquiry, it is right to knowable, I believe, under the law, right?
Yeah, not an expert on
Yeah.
right to know law.
That's something.
I do think that anonymity, like, statistics, you know, how many inquiries did you receive?
Mhm.
Sure. Who made them? I'm not sure. I think that is confidential.
Okay, then
But
that's a good.
we
point.
need an opinion on that.
Yeah, we should, and sorry. And I'm not a lawyer, did get a really good LSAT score and took one law school course at Columbia, just for the record.
Ivy, nice job.
Yeah.
It's now recorded and official.
That's a recorded official.
Put that in the minutes, Kelly.
Put that in the minutes, yes. So I think we just want to check on what the process is so that people know. There's two concerns, and I thought you brought up both of them pretty well. One is a potential inquiry person should feel comfortable in sharing this. Additionally, somebody who is subject to an inquiry doesn't necessarily want that to be right to knowable either, because it may or may not be true and could be defamatory.
So, I mean, I think this is a question for probably our solicitor.
Yeah.
But if I had to answer this question, I'm gonna probably start by calling the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission's solicitor and asking them how they handle their right to know
Right.
requests, because I would be astonished if they're identifying complainants or employers.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And I just make that that's probably a good question for if we could email the solicitor, the Pennsylvania HRC, that would be probably the definitive answer on that. I'm always curious again on this because you never know what people want. And so I have to, and by the way, put this out on the record too. Don't ever text me, email me, please. It's easier to save the emails. I store all of them. You can have them all at any time. If you text me, I have to screen capture that. It's no fun. But yeah, so all those kinds of things, we're going to make it so that people feel that they know that if they're making an inquiry or a subject of an inquiry, that their identity is protected, particularly if there's nothing there or who knows. But, make sure we're abiding by the open record, right to know laws. So that would be the HRC solicitor for the state to ask, just to validate. But I think you're right, Stan.
That's going on our to-do.
It's sort of digressing. I think before, because I think we can make a motion to approve this, but I think before, these things being added to the website, these three things, if people don't have additional corrections. But I would love to also maybe, get some of those resources. And I think that we could probably, there was at least one of those websites you sent us that had a list of like the Pennsylvania resources and all of that,
You mean
that could be a,
like reference.
yeah, reference resources. Like, let's get those up there too. And, we
Here's a
can
copy of
kind of,
ordinance.
yeah, that's actually already there.
That's up
right.
there.
That's there.
Here's a copy of, or here's a link to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Here's a link to
Yes,
the Pennsylvania
yes.
Human Relations Commission. So yeah, I mean, I think resources are helpful too. It's more information that people can get when they're making an informed decision. Specifically, where do I want to file this complaint? They may have options. They may not as well. There are different jurisdictional limits for each of those agencies.
Right.
So how much work do we want to do to create this library of resources? Obviously, all of these sites have resources, and if there are links to other sites, I don't think we need to do a whole lot of work. If there are links to articles or books, or that is a whole other ball of wax that I think we then
Oh.
have to invest.
Yeah.
No, I was just, let me see if I can go through Stan's links again and find, because one of them had it all done. And I really don't think we need to reinvent any wheels.
And I think one of the websites had like a PowerPoint that they had made with everything in it. So I think that if now or down the line, we task somebody with the PowerPoint, and then at the end, it's like, here are all of your resources in a cute little bow,
Are you a PowerPoint? I thought so.
along with all the information about us specifically.
The thing I don't
I'm great
love about, PowerPoint is just that, once it's on a slide deck, you got to remember to go in there and change it when things change. Whereas like if we just have a resource section, I don't know if our average LMT resident is like, finds a PowerPoint a friendly way to get information. Like
I think they
I
do.
teach with it, but
Right.
that's
Yeah.
not the purpose of this.
Maybe a
I
good
love the
alternative-
PowerPoint, but yeah, it's hard
In
to make it. And no, I love the PowerPoint on these.
Yeah.
I think that's
It's not
perfect
hard to
for.
make it.
Just like looking at it from like a user and viewer friendly perspective, it might be better to look at it in a way that it's viewable like that rather than paragraphs, I guess, listed on the website, but that might just be aesthetic. That just might be an aesthetic thing.
So much of the websites are aesthetic.
Yeah.
Because what we're approving, I think, or going to talk about approving today to put on our website. There's like page one on all those pretty websites. And I also saw websites that weren't pretty and had this information. So I think this stuff should go up, right away, as long as we think it's accurate. And then we can make it pretty.
Yeah, no, I was just, what else we're doing. I think it was, I don't even know how to say Conshohocken. They have, Conshohocken. These Pennsylvania words. They have state and federal resources, Housing Equality Center of PA, Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and U.S. Department of HUD. I mean, I think we could just like,
Yeah.
let's cut and paste that. I mean, we should probably verify it first.
That they're real, that
The
they're
links all
typos.
work, there's no typos, but I mean, I think that's a
Yeah.
good starting place. Stan, do you think of anything else that would be a good link off the top of your head?
No,
We can always have.
not off the top of my head, but I think to some extent, like preparing a website this is probably not the best way to do it, is come to a meeting and brainstorm. I think it's probably more work we do, cooperatively and collaboratively, or with a committee, and then come back and approve it at a meeting, and keep adding it and fixing it. But
I essentially think that's what we've done.
Yeah.
We've taken it, we've brought it back, we're just asking for feedback on what we've done. If we all like it, we can move forward. So I think, sounds like we are ready to, someone would like to make a motion to approve, these three sections. We can move on, and then we can go to what else do we want to add next, which sounds like maybe a resource list is the easy thing. So anybody want to make a motion?
For that, Byron made a comment in his email about, in particularly the protected classes section, to use bullet point, basically just a reformatting thing, and I think that would look pretty good here.
There are a lot of protected classes in our ordinance.
Right.
So
I
I
think you should-
purposely missed it because I thought the bullet points would look busy, but if you guys like to look at that better, we could absolutely do.
So I just typed a form, all by myself. And I didn't do bullet, I had to do check boxes.
Yeah.
So I would suggest if we're doing bullet points, and maybe Byron will agree or maybe he'll disagree. But if we're going to do them as bullets, you could do more than one row.
You have to have
So,
7 columns.
well, 3, like I did.
Uh-huh.
And then it wasn't so long. But I do think that breaks it. I totally agree. Visually, it's easier to find them. And particularly if you're not sure what you're looking for.
Well, having done surveys for a long time, I can tell you that you'll get much higher response rate when you make it easier to fill out. And so when people can see the specific questions rather than have to work their way back through the paragraph. And to make the bullet points, as easy to use as possible. Percentages of response are dramatically higher.
Okay. So anyone want to make a motion?
I move to put the proposed language on the website that Tara prepared and we just reviewed.
Did you want to, with a friendly,
Oh, and use it with bullet points and columns.
let's go. Would anyone like to second?
Seconded.
Go Amanda. So Kathy and Amanda. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstain? Okay, we have 3 new sections with bullet points. Okay. Next. What is next? Next is, okay, last time we met, we were talking about perhaps putting an announcement in the LMT newsletter. I can't remember exactly what we were talking about announcing, other than just that we exist.
Yeah. So-
Working on a form, and we have bullet points on the website.
Yeah, just an update with that. So the information is due on June 3rd. So any content that we would have, I have to get it to Monica, from Parks and Rec on June 3rd. If anybody had the time and wanted to, it would be coming out on August 1st. So the next information isn't accepted until August, and that comes out in November. So if you wanted to wait that long, we can. It's just that the content needs to be brought to Monica a bit before. So if anybody wanted to take that responsibility, I'd be happy to send it over to her.
It's the newsletter?
Yes.
Well, I mean, what we could do.
Like a 250 word brief.
Basically say what the mission, we could just
Yeah,
basically take the
Mhm.
mission language, put it in and say, and we meet on the,
And when we meet and
and public is welcome, and call it a day. So I think we could,
Does anybody want to take the responsibility of sending me that verbiage sometime this week or next week? Thank you.
that's a great idea.
Was that agenda item number 4?
shall I also say that John, this is a question for you. Shall I also say that we're soliciting another volunteer? Are we ready?
You don't necessarily have to do that because we
You'll
are,
put a call
huh?
out? Because you'll pull.
We constantly are asking for volunteers and we're slotting, hopefully we're getting close to where we'll have slotted most people and we've got
Okay.
the stuff. And it takes a long time to do that, unfortunately, but yeah, we're constantly looking for people. I'm recruiting for the Disability Advisory Board. If anybody, we need help there too. So if you know anybody interested in accessibility issues as well. So yes, we're always looking. So don't worry about making that pitch because we do that generally throughout for the whole township. So, but I would focus on your mission and the steps you've taken so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I do have a general question though about the voting in general. This is only our second meeting, but the first time that we've had 6 voting members. So even though quorum is 5, So just for the record, is it 5? Like, does it pass 5 or 6?
The quorum's established when you have, how many total members are on the board?
Well, there's 5 and then 2 alternates.
Okay, so if you have, at that point, a quorum's established at 3, right?
Okay.
Majority of voting
So
members.
just for the record, so would it be 5 or 6? Because there's 6.
You mean the
Yeah.
total number of the board?
She means for the minutes,
Yeah.
when we all vote, should she write it
6 or
6-0
5? Yeah, or 5-0. Because we only
because
need-
of alternates?
Yeah.
Oh. I told you I didn't go to law school.
When I've talked to Katie about this for other, for the historic, it's just sort of, we just write what it is, and because I don't think that there's, as far as she was able to see, anything procedurally documented in LMT for this stuff,
Okay.
except for
6.
It's also this idea that we have alternates, but the alternates, I mean, sometimes the alternate is only serving because somebody else isn't here, like that doesn't, I don't know, I don't really. like
So
that.
just from zoning hearing board. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the zoning hearing board, they legally need the people there, but we're not rendering any legal decisions
We may, or you
in the
may.
future.
Yes, that's why alternates are needed. So
Yeah.
if you're making a decision that is rendering a judgment, you would need alternates to make sure that you have a quorum there. Much the same way, and Paul, you did so much time on the zone, how many years on the zoning hearing board? 13. Holy cow. But you've seen and heard great stuff.
In jail by now, according
So, in those cases, there are times when, you need to have a certain number to make a decision. And that's why the alternates are there, so that if you can't get a quorum of your existing members, you have alternates to make sure you have a legal spokes.
We always had just 5. If you had extra alternates show up, they didn't vote.
Right.
So moving forward, would the alternate, it's their decision if they wanted to come and vote?
Yeah.
Are they,
Yeah, I would say,
I think the ordinance spells it out. There's
Yeah.
5 voting members.
Yeah, but
period.
I don't think you want to make a distinction that people shouldn't come because then nobody
Yeah.
will know what.
yeah, yeah.
So if somebody doesn't show up, then we can't vote, so.
But if
I-
5 voting members show up and 1 alternate shows up and and you're counting the alternate's vote and the vote is 3-3. That, and
Then the alternates. So
has
that's
affected,
Mhm.
well,
Well, no, I think that the township needs procedures for that, as far as when I asked Katie about it, aren't in existence, because we have the same issue with the historic commission.
I think it's.
But, we don't have the responsibilities that this commission has as far as making
well,
bigger decisions potentially.
my read on it was that the alternates only vote if they are needed because they're filling an open spot.
I would say too, and I think I'm such a great consensus builder that we will never have it.
Right.
So.
Or I second that motion. But the ordinance says 5 voting members, and on zoning, you have 5 people voted. If there's only 4 people there and an alternate managed to show up, the alternate got the vote, and typically alternates didn't show up if they weren't needed.
So we just, I would like to try to avoid making people feel like they're not needed, because that will create a day when I wasn't here last time and I wasn't here the time before, and then no one knows what the heck happened, so. I don't know how to tell you, Kelly, whether you're supposed to say that with the vote was 6-0, I'll let you.
I'll figure it out.
Maybe that's a solicitor thing too.
Yeah. Lovely.
All right,
Awesome.
so, I didn't put it on the agenda, but since I now have new business, I'm going to make an amendment to the agenda and do new business. Well, right, so Daniel Grenier, emailed me and caught Amanda going about her day and shared that June is Pride Month, which I knew because I did see the announcement about the flag. So we'll be flying the Pride flag and making the announcement at the Board of Supervisors meeting that June is Pride Month, encourages the community to recognize and celebrate the contributions of the LGBTQ community to Lower Makefield. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there an official flag raising event? Oh, it's the borough. Okay. That is correct. Okay. And yes, he did invite us to present on the 18th, just about what we've done thus far. All right. The last thing, since we have no public, comments, I should say mea culpa, because I think the first thing I was supposed to do was formally take attendance. Do I need to do that?
For the record, I can write it down. I'm not sure, actually.
Well, I sort of felt like if we said people voted, we were supposed to formally say who was here, just.
I'll have it.
Show we
Yeah.
are videoed.
And it's in the minutes.
Yeah, it'll be in the minutes. And then I wrote down who's motioning and who's voting, whether it's 6 or 5.
Okay, and so our to-do, just a summary of our, yeah. So our summary of our to-dos for next time will be, Kelly's gonna get a solicitor opinion from, the PAHRC on the right to know. I'm gonna write a quick blurb for the newsletter so that we can have something up there in August. Would anyone like to just create a short list of references that we can also put up, just to review at our next meeting?
You mean links to?
The links, yeah, just check that the links are
I
right.
can work with Kathy on that. Maybe we'll,
Create a short list, a long list, what do you think? Internet.
we'll email each other and we'll come back
Yeah.
with an awesome list.
Okay, reference list for the next meeting, and then, so our next meeting would be, I don't know, June. Whatnot. What are we, the fourth,
4th Wednesday.
June 26th? Is that right? I think so.
That's the fourth Thursday in June.
Okay,
That's the 25th.
For the fourth Wednesday.
today's Thursday.
I know,
Yeah,
but this was
these-
an exception to the rule
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
before we
so
got
it's
everything straightened
June
out.
25th. You're correct. So last month we met at a different, or 2 months ago, we met at a different time.
Mhm.
Fourth Wednesday at 6:30. So June 25th. Any other, so we have like 4 more minutes and I feel like there's some, maybe around Pride Month, I don't know that we really feel prepared to make any sort of presentations. Anybody want to propose something? Do you feel prepared to do anything for Pride Month?
I don't think we're really ready to do it, and I don't want to do it unless we can do it right.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to do a half-assed pride. Performative pride.
Okay, so then I feel some urgency from the gentleman to my left that we should make a really beautiful website. That would be you. So.
I don't think it's urgent. I just.
So
think
just
you do it.
as we think about what are we doing between now and next time, like 2 tests or 3 tests I just mentioned is not a lot. So I think we should think about what is next, and is next, starting to think about educational platforms and really nailing like a first gig. Is it continue work on the website? What would you next, Leslie?
I think we have a little bit more work to build the foundation. We need to get the complaint we need to get the basic structural stuff up. And yeah, I mean, as much as I want to do events or education, I think we need to do that first. And then we can move into kind of figuring out what events and what that would look like. Because also events are a lot of work.
Yeah, well, this is,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I feel like we're almost there with like the
Yes.
building blocks of the website, so I don't think it's gonna take much to do, but, certain things we could think about as sort of, a tabling event or something like that versus, you know, we host a big speech or an educational conference. Like, yes, that's a lot of work. You know, if there's community days where we want to go and have a table and provide, you know, just awareness education, I think smaller things might be a little easier to bite off first.
I agree, and I don't think we're gonna have a backlog of complaints.
Oh.
So I don't think,
No, I just wanted to get the structure in there.
Yeah,
That's
so
like, I don't
look,
think that
I
that's
think-
going to be our new full-time jobs.
complaint and response forms, I'm happy to do that. I think an inquiry form is gonna let us know whether we need any complaints. And I suspect that we probably won't need them for a while, or maybe, you know, ever. I don't see, when I go through these websites, I'm not seeing any of these HRCs talking about actually handling complaints or actually rendering decisions, which, you know, is probably good, you know, probably a good thing. But I'm happy to.
I follow the Doylestown one, and what I see is every month them canceling their meeting, that announcement. The one thing I would say is if we want, for Historic Commission, we just did like an open house here, and that actually was kind of a low threshold of labor. Like, I mean, we would have to put something together as far as information out there, but we actually had a pretty good attendance as far as people coming out and learning more. I mean,
That's I think a much.
it's probably more interesting, so we'd probably want to have a speaker or something too.
Yeah. all right. I personally feel like it's a high bar to host an event where we're speaking to the community when we. No, Jem, what is your thoughts on this subject?
My suggestion would be, once you get everything in good shape, you could have speakers down the road, and those are things that we could do with other HRCs and neighboring municipalities as well. So if you were looking for a specialist or something like that, one of the things to think about is you have multiple audiences that you can talk to in different ways. There's the general populace, which is one audience, but then there's also employers, like how to have a workplace that, you know, doesn't have inquiries or complaints against it. What do you need to do to
Right.
protect yourself and also create a good working environment?
Right, how do you comply with the law?
Right.
So we can be, I think we ought to be a resource to lower Makefield Township employers who have questions about complying with the law. What does the law require? And, you know, that should be captured on our website and on the references and, you know, as well. But I would be thrilled to get inquiries from employers with questions as well.
Right. And those kinds of things, like the EAC does a lot of stuff that is very interesting. They have, by the way, on their liaison this year, and I won't be able to go, but they have one coming up about microplastics, and PFAS and all that sort of stuff so they'll have recurring events in addition to like specialty recycling. I really could go for one of their, styrofoam recycling sessions because they just have a bunch, but they do those kinds of events. And that's once they sort of gotten up, it took a while for them to get to that level where those things get banged out all the time. And they have a cohort of members who've been there a very long time who have it down to sort of a science in a way in terms of what they do. And so that they can focus on in their meetings or like land reviews, policy changes. They've done, but they have that other stuff that's working that continues to work. And it just took them a little while to get to that level. That's possible for this board if that's what you choose. And that, you know, can definitely, there's value, I think, as I think Stan was talking about in terms of communicating to audiences and getting people engaged and helping build a better community in that way.
I also, different topic, but action wise, I mean, unfortunately, right now in our society, there's a lot of hateful events happening, and I have seen other human relations commissions making statements when that happens. We'd have to kind of figure out what that would look like. And, you know, because that needs kind of a nimble response. But it's something to think about because I also think, I mean, it's naming what's happening and it's also naming that we're in existence.
the hateful things happen in OMT too. We've had situations that aren't necessarily employee employer. They're not necessary. I mean, they're just general. Whether we've had incidents of anti-Semitism, and those sorts of things that are maybe like we've had graffiti kinds of things that are designed to intimidate and cause hate. Those get picked up on pretty quickly, but that's certainly an area for how do you mitigate against that, or how do you speak out against that is certainly something the board or the commission should consider.
I think it's probably worth us figuring out, like, where do those complaints go to? Like, do you know of that because they went to the police or because you heard from a neighbor? Because if it's systemic, then the police could maybe let us know to make a statement. I mean, and I think it's also reasonable, like Yardley Borough had that recent thing with St. Andrews where the pride flag was torn down 3 separate times. And, you know, Yardley Borough is, I mean, while not part of LMT, part of our, you know, kind of larger community.
Okay, so feels like we can talk a little bit more about this stuff next time, but good just initial brainstorm. Anything else we want to do before close for tonight? Very glad we found Amanda. Thank you. All right, Byron, we hope you feel better. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Maybe Byron will make.
Byron, would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Second?
A second.
All right, I don't think we need to vote. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.